Hey guys, it's Tom with Verus Engineering, and today we're going to be going over the install for the V1X Rear Wing on your 991 GT3RS. Alright, so first steps first is we need to gain access to the hood, trunk, whatever you want to call it. I'm not getting into that argument. Essentially, we are going to unbolt the wing uprights on both sides. So you've got three, what are these? T30 Torx head bolts, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to take the entire wing assembly, factory wing assembly off in one go. All right, so we have the wing and wing uprights removed off of the trunk lid, which is what I'm just going to refer to from now on. And basically, we had a lot of sediment built up here. You want to just make sure you wipe that off. It's not an issue on this side, but on the other side, which we'll get to in a second, basically the service caps will have to come off, and you want to reduce the amount of chances or possibility that you could get some dirt or debris inside of the oil cap or the coolant cap. So now moving on, I'm going to move to this side. Basically, we need to gain access to the actual working area, and so to do that, ta-da, working area. Okay, so what we want to do is remove this fancy GT3RS 4.0 cover. We need to remove these two plastic covers on either side, as well as this carbon fiber plate here as well. Now, if you have a .2 or 0.2, this is going to look slightly different. And basically, you're going to have one contiguous piece of beautiful carbon fiber. So in our case, we've got a 0.1, so we're gonna get to removing these three panels. Now, when we remove this beauty plate, obviously through the magic of video editing, I've been able to do this off camera. So I did it off camera, and now this is failing me horribly. So we removed the plate. Basically, the plate is held in with these nubs, and they go into corresponding rubber grommets in both of the fans. You'll see that there are 4 on each fan. So as you're pulling it up, I like to grab this corner here and this corner here, pop those up, and then grab these two corners, pop those up, and then work whichever side you want. Release those two, and then release these two, or vice versa, and then your cover should come off fairly easily. Next, we're going to remove the passenger side cover. That is held in the same way as the, I guess we'll call it the beauty plate, is held in onto the fans. You basically need to pop the grommets, or the studs out of the grommets, and then you have the cover removed. This fan can stay in. This fan, I recommend you at least release from its own set of studs and rubber grommets. If you would like to disconnect it, you can also disconnect it. It's fairly simple. You just release the tang, which is on the other side, but basically it's just a simple connector. Now we have access to the oil filler neck, which will give a little zoom in a second. So we want to remove this cover just like we did on the other side. Now, to remove this cover is a little different, but mostly the same. So it's got rubber grommets, but also we have a 10mm head bolt here. So I've got a 1/4 inch ratchet with the 10mm socket. I've already loosened it off camera, but I'm going to remove that now. So I've got this, set that aside. Now, you'll want to make sure that ideally the car or engine is cold, because we're going to remove the coolant bottle cap. And so obviously there could be a little bit of pressure build up in here. but if the engine's cold, you should not have an issue. We're also going to remove the oil fill cap, and we're going to pull this cover off with the upper portion of the oil fill neck. Okay, so what I would recommend you do at this point is, if you have some miles, some road grime may have built up over time, I recommend cleaning and wiping this down before you open the caps, before you take off this hose. Use a vacuum cleaner, do whatever you have to do. I've already wiped these down. For the coolant cap, if you just break it loose and turn it like 2 turns, you can get a rag in here and kind of clean off any debris that might be inside of this plate. But basically, as you're getting this off, you might be fighting the filler neck, and when it comes off, you might end up shaking it a little bit and getting some debris into the fill ports, which you obviously don't want to do. So I've already done that, and now I'm going to remove my caps. And what I've also done off camera is undo this clamp down here. And you just need a pair of pliers to release the clamp. And what I like to do is just by hand, try and twist the hose and get it to break its seal. If it does not break its seal, because these pieces are plastic, I'd recommend something like a radiator hose pick. You don't obviously need a snap-on one, but and they also make the tips in different shapes and designs, so you can actually get this in between the hose and the filler pipe neck, and kind of just work it real gently and break the seal. We don't want to break this hose or damage any other components that are down there. So I've got this worked loose, which means I can now begin lifting this portion up. And you'll clear the coolant fill first, and then you basically remove this like dowel or locating pin from this area here, and then you're allowed to, or you're able to, pull this piece off here. You can see there's actually a little bit of debris even on the neck. So I'm gonna wipe that off before this thing goes back in the car. I suggest you probably wanna do the same thing. Okay, our next step is going to be disconnecting this big fat connector here. This is, I know we're zoomed in here, so this is going to be on the passenger side, right under that passenger side triangle shaped cover we just took off. Again, if you have a 9.9, if you have a 0.2, this plate will look a little different, but it is in the same spot. So we need to disconnect this connector. This is probably not the factory recommended way, but what I like to do is just get a small, well, in this case it's an O-ring remover, but pry down on the tang, because sometimes these, I guess, we'll call them European style connectors, can be pretty difficult to remove in terms of releasing them. So we've got that removed. Next step is going to be removing the plate. And so in order to remove the plate, we'll need to at least pop up the last fan at this point, or if you did it earlier, then you won't need to do that now. So we've got the fan out. This piece will need to come off of the plate. It's clipped on here. There is a tang on the back of the clip that attaches this piece to the carbon fiber plate. If you pull down on that clip, it's on the back side, so you probably won't be able to see it, but just get your hand back there and feel around the bottom of the connector. Pull down on it, and the connector will then, boop. I know these, a lot of times people just rip them out and then nothing goes back correctly, but that tang, if you pull down on it, will allow this to slide, and you'll see there's a channel in here for it to go back in there during reassembly. This clip here, actually from the bottom, all you need to do is squeeze the white portion here together, and that will release the tangs so that you can remove the harness from this plate. All right, so we want to remove this plate, this carbon fiber piece here. In order to do that, there's a series of bolts that need to be removed. Basically, what we're going to have here are 3 different size Torx bits, and Here they are here. You got a T40, we've got a T30, and we've got a T25. Your T40 bolts are going to be this guy, the forwardmost on the outside, and this guy, and this guy. Now, you might be saying, I don't have any bolts there. That's because they're probably covered with this, which is basically got a little bit of double-sided tape on the top that sticks it to the head of the bolt. Use a small flathead screwdriver or something and pull it up. It shouldn't be a big deal. It should come right off. Something to think about though, you may want to re-up that tape to get it on there if you prefer it to be as legit as possible. So next we need to move on to the T25 bolts. That's going to be these two on either side. And then we have our T30 bolts that are holding the bumper skin to the plate. Once you have all of that removed, this piece will come out very easily. The exception of, potentially, depends on how you take it out, these locating pins on each side. They come off, but they are just very brittle and fragile plastic threads, so they will break pretty easily if you torque these in any of the wrong directions. Now you might notice that there is also your trunk latch that is attached to this carbon fiber piece, and you may also notice that two of those T25 bolts actually control the mounting for your tail light. So next step is to remove these tail lights. Okay, one thing I recommend doing is taping the bumper off, just so that when you slide the tail light out on either side, they don't scratch the bumper. But this is pretty straightforward. It's literally just gonna come straight out, just like that. And then you have a connector on the back, which you will disconnect. Just like that. All right, so in order to transfer some of the load into the chassis of the car, we've developed these brackets, and these are gonna get bolted onto the chassis of the car. We also supply this Delrin block, or bracket, whatever you wanna call it, and that is going to be there to help make sure that the car doesn't get damaged in any way through any vibration or just the car or the trunk moving around. Now, we're gonna want to attach this using the small M4 socket head cap screws. They're these little tiny guys. Don't even know if you can see it very well. Yep. And they're gonna go through here. Two of them. So we're gonna take our 2.5mm Allen key and we're gonna tighten these down. A quarter turn pass snug is probably more than enough, honestly, but 30 inch-pounds is roughly what you're gonna want here. So for most people, just hand tightening it with like a T-handle or an Allen key is gonna be more than enough. Here's what it should look like when you're done. It should be sloping and pointing away from this guy here. All right, guys, so the last portion of prepping this panel or prepping the car in general to get the wing installed is this. We actually need to remove this bushing here. And if you look, there's an inner and an outer sleeve. So I dropped this earlier. What we've done is provide a really nice little bushing press tool. It's got our logo on it and everything. Ooh. Okay, and now what we want to do is press the inner portion out and basically not screw up the carbon fiber. So here's what we do. Put the bolt through the tool and then put the tool onto the carbon fiber with the bolt going through the bushing, and then the tool should sit on the outside of this bushing piece here. Then you're going to take the small end of the press tool, put it onto the bolt, like so. Take the nut, thread it down onto the bolt. And now what you want to make sure is that, if you can see, this inner or small bushing press piece should be on the inner bushing. All right, now you want to take your 13mm wrenches, one here and one here, and you're going to start tightening both of them. And what's going to happen is, as you tighten them, this inner press piece is going to force the sleeve into the receiver end of the tool, and then you'll be able to take this piece out. You want to repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll show you what the next step is. All right, so you can see we've got the stud on the bottom side, and now the stud is going to line up in this hole, just like that. And then you'll see the top two, or the forward-most holes here, should both line up as well. Next step is to grab your 18mm washer and a 6mm nylock nut that's supplied in the hardware kit, and then simply start those bolts, or sorry, nuts. Grab your 10mm and begin tightening that stud. All right, so we basically have snugged, or I'm going to finish snugging up this stud, and to the point where it's just, again, snug. You can still move it around. Repeat that process for the other side, and then we're gonna move on to actually bolting up the wing uprights to the trunk, and then we're gonna start figuring out the spacing between this and the wing upright so that we get the best fit possible. All right, so we're gonna grab our wing upright, and we're gonna grab the factory hardware that we removed previously, and as always, when you have multiple holes, start each bolt separately. Like so. And then we're gonna grab our T30. Once you have all the bolts started and bottomed out, you're gonna want to torque to 100 inch-pounds. Don't exceed that. Wing uprights are mounted. Repeat the process for both sides, or the other side, and then we'll begin adjusting the wing upright to the chassis plate. All right, so our chassis brace is bolted up. It's just snug, but we still have a little bit of adjustment to move it back and forth, or side to side. When you go to shut the trunk slowly, you want to make sure that the chassis brace piece is not contacting the upright in any harmful manner, in terms of like binding it or chipping the powder, anything like that. Next thing you'll notice is that there is a hole right here, and that hole is going to be used for the clevis pin we're going to use to add a bit of extra security for the wing upright, in terms of keeping it in place and making sure everything is nice and stout. So what I like to do is basically, with the chassis portion a little loose, is insert the clevis pin with the the head portion, or the flange portion, on the outside of the car, and move it around until you pretty much are lined up. I can't actually see what's going on here. With the upright. You might have a little bit of trouble, and you might need to push down on the upright a little bit, and that's relatively normal, but it should go in with relative ease. And Once those two pieces are in, if you look on the other side, you should see that the hole for the cotter pin has enough clearance to put the cotter pin through it. So with that, I'm actually going to pull this back out and we can begin reassembling that carbon fiber plate and putting the tail light and everything back in. All right, so off camera, I reinstalled this carbon fiber plate and verified that the latch and the trunk mechanism, trunk release mechanism and everything still work. A quick note or tip here, another reason why it's a good idea to have the tail lights still out of the car as you go to reassemble everything and put them in last is that if this harness here is still unclipped off of if it's unclipped off of the radiator plate, like I had you do at the beginning, basically if you make a mistake and you accidentally fully latch this into the radiator plate for whatever reason, you can still put your arm in there and reconnect the connector and then open the latch. Otherwise you're kind of SOL, or there might be some insane process to get this thing back open. So that's just a quick little thing on my end that I recommend doing. You can choose to do literally anything else that might suit you better. So we're gonna reinstall the fans, the covers, and put the oil fill port bracket back on the car. We're gonna shut the trunk and we're gonna get to reinstalling or installing the V1X wing element. All right, so with the help of a friend, again, we're going to get the wing on the car. Basically, I like to start with the front bolt. It makes it a little bit easier because that one only goes in one hole. And then, at this point, depending on where you want to set your wing angle, you would essentially put the bolt through the corresponding two holes on the wing mount and the upright to get the achieved angle. All right, so basically now what we're doing is loosely installing hardware. You're gonna want a 5/16 socket, 12 point, and you're gonna wanna start all of the bolts and nuts first, and then we can get into actually tightening these things. So we're gonna torque our hardware down to about 6 foot-pounds. You don't need to kill it. The nuts are a crimp style, so they will resist backing off at any kind of vibration. All right, wing end plates. Basically, 2 bolts, M4s. We're gonna attach them using a 2.5 millimeter Allen key socket, T-handle, whatever you have. I happen to have a T-handle on me right now. You're going to receive the hardware with M4 bolts, the end plate washer, and it will have an O-ring groove that is machined to fit an O-ring that you can see there. So you want to insert the O-ring into the end plate washer. If it doesn't stick very easily, you can use like just a little dab of water that's on your hand. Or another way to do it is to have it sit flat on the end plate, kind of like I'm doing right now. Drop the bolt through it. Hold it in place with your Allen's wrench and basically get it started into the wing. The next one, I do something similar by holding it up onto the wing and then starting my hardware. It's at this point you would set the angle of which you want your end plate. It can be literally whatever you want as long as that measurement is within the adjustability of the end plate. We are going to choose to make ours level, and I'm going to eyeball that with my, as they say, ichrometer, somewhere around there, and go ahead and snug these up. These only need to be snug. You don't need to kill them. Bottom them out, give them an 1/8 of a turn. That's it. All right, last but not least, we need to get our clevis pin into the chassis mount and the wing upright. So if you have everything latched, should slide right in, just like that. Sometimes the powder coat might be make things a little sticky. We also provide 2 different styles of, get the focus right, 2 different cotter pin styles, and you can choose whichever one you like, and just make sure the pin goes in through the hole on the other side. And you're good to go. All right, if you choose to do so, we do supply a gurney for a little bit of additional downforce. And it can be applied to the trailing edge of the wing. To do that, we supply a roll of 3M VHB double-sided sticky tape. If you want to install it, I want to show you how to install it really quickly. Basically, it's very simple. We're going to prep both surfaces that are going to be making contact with the VHB tape with a 50-50 mix of isopropyl alcohol and water. Once we have both surfaces prepped, like I have here, we're basically just going to apply our tape. I personally would recommend applying it to the gurney first and then sticking the gurney onto the wing itself. But basically, you're going to apply the tape on there, and then you'll want to apply some pressure evenly across the entire wing surface that is going to be contacting the tape. And that's going to wrap it up for the install of the V1X Rear Wing for your GT3RS. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, be sure to email us at sales@verus-engineering.com. Until next time, we'll see you later.